Tori Amos on ABC Goulburn Murray. And if you knew someone who had an idea about valuing different fine arts, would you be the type of person to say, hey, why don't you come round to my house and have a bit of a look around? It must be one of the pitfalls of being in the industry. But don't take my word for it. The Australian Decorative and Fine Arts Society, otherwise known as ADFAS, they're a not-for-profit organisation run by volunteers, and they provide regular informative and entertaining lectures on lots of different topics relating to the arts. And ADFAS Murray branch will have their next guest speaking this evening. But really, he could just talk about his career. It would have you hooked. But tonight, Leigh Capel will be talking about Australian women artists, 1880 to 1980. And he can provide us with a bit more info. Leigh, good morning.
Thanks, Sandra, for having me on the show.
I have to ask, first of all, let's talk about Australian women artists in a sec, but let's talk about you and the work that you've done as a valuer. Do people hassle you and sidle up and say, well, have a look at this, what do you think it's worth?
Yeah, that's generally the case. I obviously work around Sydney, and a lot of people approach me and ask me what the value of things are, or they contact me, and generally because of my experience I have a general idea. Not always the case, but it is helpful with my background.
Well, see, I mean, everyone loves Antiques Roadshow and, seeing someone's face either fall when they realise that, it's not worth anything, or light up when they have a hidden treasure. And so I imagine that there'd be a lot of people who'd be hoping that maybe you're going to provide them with some good news.
Exactly, and in this industry you need to be completely honest, because it's either worth something or worth nothing. And I had this little trick I used to do when I was working in the auction rooms, and it was every time someone would bring me a painting and it was meticulously wrapped up, I would always get disappointed because I knew it wasn't going to be something special. But then on the other side of the coin, there would be people who would bring a painting in a plastic bag and the frame was falling off, and I would always get excited because I knew it was going to be something valuable. And in 6 years I was never proven wrong.
Really?
Yeah, never proven wrong.
Wow. What about the career, I guess, of your mother's business that you then went into as well, supplying art and furniture to film and TV?
Yeah, so originally my mum started the business that I currently run in 2004 when I was still at school, and I actually was studying up the road at Newington College, and I used to go into the gallery. I was in year 12 at the time, and she said to me, I said to her I would never come back, and I'm running the business about 10, 15 years later. But she got in early to Federation Furniture and Arts and Craft, and she was approached by productions such as Basmark, which is Baz Luhrmann's film production company, and Catherine Martin, and they used to source all the Federation period furniture from her shop. And so if you watch The Great Gatsby or Australia, or even some of like Mel Gibson's work, so Hacksaw Ridge or Russell Crowe's Water Diviner, a lot of that furniture is my mother's.
That must be, you must get a buzz looking at those movies and going, oh yeah, that's ours.
Yeah, well, that's it. You go looking through these movies and you're looking for the exact pieces, and one in particular piece, because generally they would hire the pieces rather than buy them, but one particular piece was in the scene in The Great Gatsby where they're throwing the champagne around. It actually got destroyed by the champagne, so they had to buy it.
See, didn't I say that just talking about your career history would be enough of a lecture, I reckon? But you're doing even more than that. You're talking about Australian women artists, 1880 to 1980. I mean, that's a fair slab of time you're covering.
Yeah, well, I think it's important in this climate at the moment to talk about the rise of women art in Australia, because it's becoming more of a relevant topic. So back in colonial times, women artists were sort of set aside, and so I basically track the progression of women art in Australia up until 1980, because in 1975 was the International Year of the Woman, and that changed everything in Australia, because that was when national galleries started to fill in those gaps in their collection and collect female Australian artists. So I used 1980 as basically the bookend, but obviously since then it's been incredible progression in Australian women artists since then. But I think that was the point that I'd like to finish on and save the rest for another lecture.
Gosh. Do you have to, within your work and all of that, know a lot about lots of different types of art, or Australian women artists? Is that your niche, or how do you keep all this info in your head?
Well, for some reason, I studied film originally, so I'm partial to storytelling and understanding interesting points about particular creatives. So in my past, that's something with me. I never realised that I had quite a good visual photographic memory. So when it comes to my background in working in auction rooms, and I would see, 1,000 paintings a week, and you just start absorbing all this information and you start to realise which are the good quality artists. And you are introduced to a lot of artists that aren't written down in history books, artists that were significant in their time back in, when it would be the 1920s or the 1880s, and they were written about in newspapers but not translated into history books. So that's the benefit of my background, is I get to see those niche artists that have been forgotten in history.
Well, the benefit for us is that we can come and hear you talk about it, and no doubt ask you a few questions about yourself as well, at Hot House Butter Factory Theatre on the Causeway in Wodonga, and I'll run through the detail of that. But Leigh Capel, really interesting to speak with you, as I knew it would be.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for having me.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
See ya. So Leigh Capel, he'll be at the Butter Factory Theatre tonight. He is the next guest speaker for ADFAS, the Australian Decorative and Fine Arts Society, Murray branch, and it'll be at 6 o'clock for drinks, and then 6:30 the lecture will start. And if you'd like to find out more about ADFAS, then you can just do a search. They're on Facebook, and they've got a website as well, so you can find detail about who can join or come along. Everyone can come along, but there may be a price involved in that as well. On ABC Goulburn, Murray, it is almost time to head to the news, and maybe, I'm excited, after 9 o'clock this morning, we may get some answers. What alarm sound do you wake up to?